If I'm going to live 30 more years with the advances that we're making in the healthcare industry, as well as studying genetics, as well as my own lifestyle, my own transformation, I thought, I could live to be 105. What in the heck are you going to do for 40 years? Just start a different life, a new career, and here we go.
Just because somebody's a poor student does not define who they're going to be or the person that they will become.
I think that school is great at measuring different things, but self-worth is not one of them. If in your family life, they have attached your grades to your self-worth, then you end up feeling horrible. That's why we end up with this less than feeling. We're never going to be enough. You're not a victim, and you are accountable for everything that happens in your life. If you weren't a doer and you didn't have a list of accomplishments, you had no worth. My place in the family, as you can imagine then, was the black sheep, but I lacked the self-confidence to believe that I was of worth. Something said, Mary, you're really brilliant. Oh, that was the key.
You're right there after the doctor catering event. How do you go from that to catering for Oprah?
One of those divine moments when I thought, what would you like to do? What is your passion? What do people light up when they watch you talk about it? You just have to believe. I said no to no one. Can you do this? Absolutely. That was my mantra. Absolutely, I can do that. Oftentimes people ask me, did you ever think that you would have the largest catering company and the most awarded catering company in the state of Utah? I respond the same thing. Absolutely. Because if you don't dream it, you can't possibly achieve it. When you're bringing your very best self, what do you automatically know about that person? That they are a person of integrity, because anything less would not be their best self. You're bringing your very best self, and I trust you to help me find mine. That concept changes the world.
I'm curious, were there events or decisions or things along the way that you look back on and can say, man, that was a huge mistake?
Nelson Mandela, who said, I am either winning or I'm learning. And that is one of the best mindsets, when you can look back and say, what did I learn from this? Any of my decisions in my career as losing, I really think they were learning opportunities for me of what can I bring better. Very few things in this life are a one-shot time.
Prepare to be inspired. You're about to hear one woman's journey from welfare to riches. My next guest, Mary Crafts, is an entrepreneur who started a catering business while she was on welfare and had 2 small children. She built her business from there into an international catering operation that catered events for Oprah Winfrey, Elton John, and multiple U.S. presidents. How'd she do it? With grit, determination, and one of the most inspiring attitudes I've ever heard. You guys are going to love this one. Boundary Breakers is brought to you by Carter and Clark. Whether it's business executives or younger folks that are, would-be or hopeful entrepreneurs, so that stories of people like you can inspire and help others learn from your benefits, your mistakes, the ups and the downs.
Well, I looked back at some of your guests, and you do have a wide variety.
Yeah.
I do think I might be the oldest person you've ever had on your podcast, but that's
no way. Well, let me tell you this: if that's
I'm
the
almost
case,
72. I'm almost 72.
Oh my gosh! Well, I would never have guessed that. And I think we've had a couple. That beat you.
Okay.
My mom is turning 80. June 25th. So you guys
congratulations to your mom.
Thank you. She's very, very special to me. But you guys have lots of life left to live. So
absolutely. And I think that's the one thing when I retired at age 65 that I thought, if I'm going to live 30 more years, and I at the time really thought, that's possible for me now with the advances that we're making in the healthcare industry, as well as studying genetics, as well as my own lifestyle, my own transformation. I thought, I could live to be 105. What in the heck are you going to do for 40 years?
Yeah, right. It's crazy.
Sit around, play golf every day, watch the news channel all day long. I mean, serious. So I just started a different life, a new career, and here we go.
Yeah, I love it. Well, before we jump in, is there anything that you want to make sure that we do talk about, and is there anything that you want to make sure we stay away from?
Now I'm an open book.
Okay.
The more vulnerable that I can be with your people, the more they will learn.
I couldn't have said it better. What I like to do is I try to. I mean, it's not super structured, but I think it's important at the outset to just get a little bit of what I call an origin story, just a background. You can go into as much depth as you'd like in terms of, sort of where you grew up, the type of family situation that you were born into, and then sort of how you got to your professional career. And then from there, we'll take it. I'm very interested to hear about all this stuff, and I have your bio and have done a little bit of research, and you're fascinating, so I can't wait. But with that, we'll just jump in. Does that work?
Great. Sometimes
Awesome.
I do that on my podcast. I spend so much time talking to them, and then when I get on the podcast, I'm like, did I talk about that already or what?
I know. It is. Yeah, it's very difficult. So, and I will, I'll ask a bunch of questions, but this is about
Good.
you, not about me. And so,
But I think that when you do an interview style like this, I can tell already that questions will just naturally arise, and that's what we should talk about.
Exactly. Some people are like, you just go in without like exact questions, and
I do too.
I said that sounds scripted. If I do that, I need to know.
Yep.
I need to introduce myself and figure out what I want to know in the moment. So
yeah.
Well, I love it. Well, so Mary, can you give us a little bit of background in terms of early life, where you grew up, and how you made it to the age of where you started working?
Yeah. I think I would have been voted in my senior class as least likely to succeed. I seriously do, because I don't think anybody in my growing up years saw Mary as someone who was a bright light, someone who was really going to make a difference in this world, who had the ability to move the needle. Now, some kids, when they're growing up, are instilled with that from the get-go. And they grow up knowing that they're awesome. And they just can't wait for the world to see it because their parents do,
Yeah.
And I grew up in a very different kind of a home. Not that it was a bad home. I had a very good home. But I was born in 1953. So this is a time right after the war. And this is a time where the Christian Puritan values were of big importance in our country, and that you had to get ahead by doing something. Now, did you hear what I said? By doing something.
Yeah.
So it was nothing about your self-worth or who you are as a person, and aren't you lovely and what a bright light. It was about what you did. And that was drilled into me from the get-go. If you weren't a doer and you didn't have a list of accomplishments, you had no worth. Now, I don't think my mom and dad really believed that I was not of worth unless I did something like, received a superior on my piano performance or had straight A's. And I already had a brother and sister that did that. So my place in the family, as you can well imagine then, was the black sheep. And I didn't get any of those things. And my list of accomplishments was nothing. And I grew up in a small town in Iowa, rural Iowa, of 250 people.
Wow.
And so talk about small town. But yet that I have no regrets of that, because it gave me an overall sense of a value system that has served me well. I know what it means to have integrity. And I know what it means to be trustworthy. I know what it means to be kind to your neighbor. All those kinds of things and values I grew up with. But I lacked the self-confidence to believe that I was of worth. And so in that regard, and carrying that black sheep banner, of course, bigger than life, I'm the black sheep, and that gives me a place in this world. I went to my freshman year of college, promptly flunked out of my freshman year, and just my parents finally threw up their hands and said, listen, don't call us, we'll call you. which is probably a huge wake up call for me. And shortly after that, I decided to, they weren't going to have me back at my school in Iowa. And so I decided to come west to go to school. And I applied, was accepted on probation because I did have amazing ACT scores. Something said, Mary, you're really brilliant. And if you apply yourself, oh, that was the key. If you apply yourself, can't I just do something where brilliance is just like accepted? But anyway, I graduated in social work and I went to BYU. Now, this is the interesting part. I was one of the few people that graduated from BYU without my MRS degree. So I didn't get married. I was still single and life looked very bleak for me. And I can remember screaming at the heavens, if you don't provide me a husband, I'm going to move to Orem, just so you know, which is about 5 minutes from where I was living. And so I wasn't that huge adventuresome spirit either. But when the opportunity provided itself to be married, I was. I met this gentleman, an individual, and within 3 months was married. Yeah. And there were times when I just wanted to beat my head with a hammer and say, what were you thinking? But now at this age, when I look back and I can actually see the universe's hand in my life as it guided me through all these different situations, I thought I wasn't of self-worth. So why would anyone want me? I didn't think I had a value. So whatever I was able to get was what I deserved. I married an individual who really on our honeymoon was the first time he really beat me. And I came back, was ready to get a divorce. I didn't care if I didn't have my MRS degree. I was getting out of here, and then was given the counsel that I should stay. And I did. And over the 28 years that I was married to him, so many times I sought support in leaving and didn't receive it. So life goes on, and you have two choices. You can either stay stuck and a victim, or, as our wonderful friend Viktor Frankl always said, you can take everything from me, but you cannot take my mind and how I think and how I experience life. He chose in those concentration camps whether he was going to be a victim or a victor. And as I read his words in my late 40s, I thought, that's me. I am either going to be a victim or a victor.
I
And
love that.
so that's kind of how my business started, because the person that I married had a severe mental illness. He was bipolar. He had a paranoia disorder. He had a rage disorder. And all of that, a large part of that, because he was struggling with being gay in a community that did not accept that. And I didn't understand that piece either at the time. But as life unfolds, you see how that we provided for each other a place for growth and to step out and to accept who we are and explore our own personal lives. And that's exactly what happened. That's how Culinary Crafts kind of started my company.
Yeah.
At the time, we were on welfare, and I had a brand new baby and a 2-year-old. And I thought, okay, I really have a few choices here. I can stay on welfare. I can divorce right now and just spend the rest of my time trying to find somebody else to marry as an unhealed individual, which meant repeating the process. Or I can pick myself up by my bootstraps and support this family because I knew I could. and thus started Culinary Crafts. I pulled a little red wagon around my neighborhood, selling cookies and breads and trying to sell people's birthday parties. I had my 2 little boys in tow in the wagon.
Oh, wow.
And I always tell, when I speak now at universities about people in finances and different things, I always tell them, now listen, guys, if you get in trouble financially, just get a little red wagon, put 2 kids in it, and pull around the neighborhood. Anybody will buy anything from you. Do you know what I
Wow.
mean?
Well, that's
And
incredible.
that's
But
the start.
that's amazing. That is amazing. And I can't wait to dive into how you grew that. But a couple of things jump out about your story. And the first is I just want to say this. It's shocking to me. I mean, I've had, over 100 people on this podcast, and every one of them has done extraordinary things. And it's stunning to me how many of those people were poor students.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. You mentioned that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I heard was that, that didn't give you a whole lot of confidence and made you feel like, you maybe were worth less than your siblings. And I just want,
Yeah.
I mean, you have gone on, we're about to hear about the extraordinary things that you've done. And I just want to it just sort of jumps out in my head to make sure that, everybody knows, at least the listeners know, just because somebody's a poor student does not define, who they're going to be or what they will be, or the person that they will become later in life. And don't let it get you down. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try, but don't let it get you down, right?
Yeah. I am totally on that page. I think that school is great at measuring different things, but self-worth is not one of them.
Yeah, for sure.
And if in your family life, they have attached your grades to your self-worth, then you end up feeling horrible.
Yeah.
Now, the rare family does not attach grades, and you're failing, you're getting D's, but they still love you at home and they think you're going to be, the head of, some CEO of some company. That's rare. I have to just say that's rare. That's why we end up with this less than feeling that
Right.
we're never going to be enough. We're never going to be enough.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Viktor Frankl. It was one of my favorite books of all time, A Man's Search for Meaning. And, your words were just very insightful, I think, in that I think we as a society do a terrible job of letting society define who we are and how we feel and what we are. And like you mentioned, Viktor Frankl was just so, was brilliant in the sense that nobody else can do that. Nobody else gets to do that. And no matter what they take, no matter what anybody does to you, how bad it seems, nobody can ever take who you are, your self-worth, how you feel about it. And not being a victim is just, first of all, kudos and congratulations. I mean, that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think 999 people out of 1,000 people in your scenario would probably sort of just capitulate to their lot in life or whatever hand they were dealt. And it sounds like you decided that wasn't going to happen. And it all started with a wagon and two kids, right?
I absolutely believe the reason that I was dealt that hand was so that at this point in my life, I could tell others, you're not a victim. And you are accountable for everything that happens in your life. And come stand toe to toe with me, born in that little podunk town in Iowa, and live the life I live, that being your very best self is not possible. I believe that's why I went through all of that, so I can be at this point now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, so, all right, you started with the red wagon and 2 kids and started, were you, at that point, were you essentially like, I'll do anything or sell anything? Or did you know that you wanted it to be food or catering related? Walk us through sort of how that developed.
Yeah. I was at the point of I will do anything, sell anything. This is back when you actually could go door to door to sell things without being shot. Yeah. And so I sold Avon. Huh. I put them in the wagon, went around the neighborhood, sold Avon. I was your little Avon consultant, door to door. I taught piano lessons. I taught voice lessons. I did whatever I could to to make a living. I did telemarketing. I would put my little babies to bed at night, then go in, telemarket through the night, and you could telemarket in areas that weren't in your time zone.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so still talk to people. That's when people would still pick up the phone. See, this is all pre what's going to help your people, but
But
because nobody telemarkets anymore and nobody sells door to door. But the idea is that, yes, I was willing to do anything. And then one of those divine moments when I thought, well, what would you like to do? What is your passion? What do people light up when they watch you talk about it? And for me, it was not accounting. Nobody lights up when I start talking numbers or finances. But people light up when I start talking about food. And when I start describing the sear on a steak and the melted gorgonzola as you carve through it and it melts down through the protein fibers. And you get to blah, 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 blah. I mean, I can make food sound like it's something you've got to have at this moment. And I start thinking, I love to cook, but more than love to cook, I love to entertain. I love to throw a party. I love to see people's faces when they walk in and they say, this is all for us? Wow. I love the joy that comes from breaking bread together. The number of business deals that are done over a loaf of bread, it makes the world go round. And if you can ingratiate people into supreme hospitality, all things are possible in that kind of loving, experience-based situation. So I thought, well, maybe I could cater. I didn't know. So I started putting flyers on the rich neighborhood stores. And I got a little business from that. I remember my first Christmas party I got from a doctor by doing that. And they called and they said, can you do a whole poached salmon? I was like, oh, absolutely. Now, keep in mind, I'd never been to culinary school. And so I was like, oh, absolutely. And they said, great. Well, we'd like a whole one delivered at such and such time. I hung up the phone. And of course, this is before the internet, before the cell phone, before get to the library. I brought home more books about poaching a salmon and going through them and teaching myself how to poach a salmon and deliver this beautifully decorated salmon. I could follow anything. And you just have to believe. I said no to no one. Can you do this? Absolutely. That was my mantra. Absolutely, I can do that. And began to believe in myself enough that I could. And oftentimes people ask me, did you ever think that when you were pulling that little red wagon or reading Julia Child's book on how to, make chicken divan, that you would have the largest catering company and the most awarded catering company in the state of Utah? I respond the same thing. Absolutely. Because if you don't dream it, you can't possibly achieve it.
I love that. So you got your first sort of memorable catering job from a doctor from hanging flyers. What you started with nothing, and I've got 5 kids, and people used to ask me growing up, what is it? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And I think that's a really difficult answer for people, a difficult question for people to answer. I've always said, to me, it's about go find what you don't want to do, and then that will lead you to what you want to do. Because it's just that's a hard question to answer. And so it sounds like you sort of went through that. You don't want to do accounting or finance, and recognized your talent, what one of the things that you were talented in doing or enjoyed, passionate about. Put your mind to it. You got a doctor, so you had that experience. What was next? Because I'll go ahead and ruin the surprise for the audience. I mean, you ended up catering events for Oprah Winfrey, for Elton John, and for 2 U.S. presidents.
Yeah.
So share with us how you went. You're right there after the doctor catering event, right? How do you go from that to catering for Oprah?
Part of it is that believing that I could do anything, that I totally believed in grit, that with enough hard work, anything could be accomplished. And in the beginning, I wore all the hats until I had my first employee. So I was the janitor, I was the delivery person, I was the setup and serve person, I was the cook person, I was the go to the grocery store and procure things person, I was the marketing person. You wore all the hats. And sometimes as an entrepreneur, in the beginning, that's a necessity. You have to wear multitude of hats. And I think there's value in that, in getting to know the different kinds of jobs and responsibilities within a company. But eventually, then when you get another job and another job, and you're no longer, staying by the phone and just praying that the phone will ring, now you're praying that it doesn't ring.
Yeah.
And so uh, there's a time that comes that's very critical. There were two critical times for me. One was when I realized I could no longer do it all. And I have a bunch of employees, but they're not organized into their best skill sets. So I had to stop and ask, what is my best skill set? Now, I am one heck of a cook, but I'm not a certified chef. And even now, when I walk into the kitchen, even after retired, they call me chef. And I love that. I take that as a great honor. But it wasn't my best skill set. And so I began to think, what is my best skill set? And without a doubt, I knew that it was in sales and marketing. So I hired chefs, left the kitchen at year 10, and went into the front office and started into sales and marketing. Developed enough kind of what I called, roadmaps for both of those, that I was even called on to speak at national catering conventions of how to sell, how to market. And I was very, very good at it.
Wow.
And what I came to realize is that every single thing that is a piece of marketing is trying to convince you that you are less than. Now, just think about that. If you buy this car and you drive this car, then you'll be the man of the hour. If you wear this clothes, then, okay. If you live in this house, then. If you have these toys, if you drink this kind of alcohol, whatever it is, every piece of marketing is geared to having people believe that they are less than if they buy their product. And as I realized that, I thought, that is what I've been doing. I've tried to convince people that if they hire culinary crafts, they will be better than the rest of their competitors. If your open house, your grand opening is catered by us, everyone will take note and think you are really something. I marketed the you are less than for a long time, until finally I was so disgusted with myself. I knew there was a better way. And it was really where I dug deep into, what am I really selling? I'm selling the opportunity for me to showcase my best self so you can be your best self. And that single purpose shifted me from selling from the standpoint of you're less than unless you use me, to together we're going to be each other's best selves. It's a shift in mindset. It's a shift in how I served my events. It was a shift in how I dealt with my clients. It's moving from manipulating people to truly, and I know in business we don't like to use this word, but I'm going to use it, to truly loving people.
Yeah. That is extraordinary. And I never really thought about it that way, right? I mean, and you're exactly right. The traditional sort of call it, the MBA model for marketing is what's the problem? Like identify the problem, and then
Yeah.
the product or the service solves that problem for that particular buyer, right? And so that's you have this problem or you have this issue, and if you buy from me, I can make that better, make you better.
But
But
do you really? Now, the companies that are successful and their salespeople are successful and their team works, at the core, they truly believe that. But eventually, if you don't believe that and you believe your skill set is just to manipulate people, eventually you fail.
yeah, but there's a big difference between, look, you have this problem and we have the solution, so pay us money for the solution. There's a big difference in that and the message of, look, we believe that life should be one without this problem in it, and we solve it for a lot of people. And so if you'd like to come, if you believe similarly, then let's sort of take hands and partner together, because in a world where we both believe the same thing, which is very different from, I have what you
Yeah.
need, let me separate you from your money.
And when you tell people, my sole purpose in this life is for me to be my best self, they look at you like, so are you the definition of narcissist? And I'm like, but if I truly am being my best self only wants the best for you. Anything less than that is not my best. And so when someone is bringing their very best self, the one thing that you know in business, and the other, even though you may not relate to this concept, you'll relate to this concept. When you're bringing your very best self, what do you automatically know about that person? You know that they are a person of integrity, because anything less would not be their best self. And you're not sure if that their product is really going to help you, but you've developed a trust. You're bringing your very best self, and I trust you to help me find mine.
Yeah.
That concept changes the world.
Yeah. No, that's very intriguing. I mean, it reminds me of just the understanding that, look, if you're going to engage with somebody, whether that be in business or socially or what have you, if that other person if their cup is full, right, or if they're their best self, as you put it, they're not going to necessarily need something from you, or they're not going to have they're not going to be looking to fill a problem of their own or have self-serving needs. If they're their best self, then they're going to be able to give and to focus on whoever they're engaging with. It's like the in an airplane when the oxygen masks come down, right? They say, for the mother to secure their own mask, and then then you can help others.
Yep.
If you've got oxygen, you can help others, and if I think that's what you're saying. If you're your best self, you can help others. Otherwise, the person is trying to fill their own needs or do something, perhaps quote unquote selfish, as opposed to giving. And that's also fascinating. I mean, that I think you're definitely onto something, and I mean that genuinely. That's not sort of mainstream.
It
thought.
isn't, and it's not talked about. It's why I believe people don't like to talk about things like, what does that mean to really serve in love? Because they don't know how to define it. And so, but if you can define bringing your best as sales numbers, then I can define that and I can measure it.
Right.
But how do I measure if you've loved someone?
Yeah.
It's the same. Because when you're truly involved in being and bringing your best self every day and helping others, what do you think happens to your sales numbers?
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
And how did I get to be the largest catering company? We have 28 Best of State awards. I was named Businesswoman of the Year, CEO. We're International Caterer of the Year one year. I mean, you don't just get those awards by being only self-centered. So self-centered is the exact opposite of bringing your best self.
And I imagine that those years when you guys won those awards, you didn't set out at the beginning of that year or at any point
Never.
to say, we're going to win the award this year. What do we need to do?
Yeah.
That is a symptom or a result of chasing something different, right?
Yeah. So you asked me about what were the steps from pulling the little red wagon to catering for the presidents and Oprah Winfrey, Elton John. I mean, just a whole list of celebrities. And I've seen so many celebrities now, I don't have celebrity FOMO. I'm just like, oh, yeah, that's good. Nice. Yeah. It's the wannabes that are trouble. The wannabes that, they want to play better than. But the actual celebrities themselves, the ones that I encountered for the most part, were really wonderful people. And I was really happy to be part of their lives, and they were happy to be part of mine. But the steps in between were building on being my best self. So if I'm being my best self and I'm a woman of integrity and I'm a company that people can trust to bring what I promise, that's critical, that you're going to deliver what you've promised. In fact, I stood by that so much that I never required payment in advance until after the event was over. Now, no one does that. And that put me in a different category. And I would tell people, you are trusting me to show up as my best self. And I trust you to pay me. And in tens of thousands of events, 2 I didn't get paid for.
Wow. That's unbelievable. So
I wanted to just tell you then about the steps. So
please.
Let's talk about prior to the Olympics. So now we've got the bid. It's 1996. They're coming in 2002. And I'm thinking, gee, I would like to do some catering for that, but I'm just kind of I'm not like the big guys. And, but I was growing all the time. I was getting better because I was bringing my best. I was getting a lot of great reviews, but still not sure how to market to this international piece of business. One day, out of the blue, the International Olympic Committee called me and said, we'd like to interview you to look to be our exclusive caterer at the Games. What? I was completely dumbfounded. And we also have Sports Illustrated, because back then they were a big deal. And if you come along, if we choose you, Sports Illustrated will choose you. I'm like, okay, well, and
this is
I
the
just
this is
kept
the
thinking,
2002 Winter
Olympics.
Games in Salt Lake City. Okay.
I had no idea how they ever found me until after I had secured the bid. And these weren't the bid for the athletes. When you work for the actual IOC, these are the bids for their hospitality suites, where everyone in the world who's anyone is coming. And they are only going to trust the very best with those people. Like the day that I'll never forget, the day the mayor of Beijing walked in and his wife had a 20-foot train of mink coat behind her.
Oh my God.
I mean, people like that, royalty and heads of business. And so finally I said to them, after it was all said and done, how did you happen to call me? As I'm holding the torch that they gave me in a beautiful crystal case. And on the torch it said, for a gold medal performance, the best catering ever at any Olympic game. And I said, how did you find me? And this is what they said. When we came to Salt Lake City, we did not ask who was the biggest caterer. We did not ask even who was the best caterer. we ask, who is the caterer that you trust to always bring their best? And they said, well, that has to be Culinary Crafts.
Wow.
And at the time, we were just in Utah County. Now we have offices, Utah County, Salt Lake County, Park City. But they reached across that dreaded point of the mountain into Utah County and plucked us out
Wow.
to work all these events. And it changed really who I am. And because of that opportunity that came in 2002, then came the opportunity to cater for those presidents. Then came the opportunity to be catering for the Sundance Film Festival. Then came the opportunity to cater for every big thing that opened up here, every big launch, people want to work with people they trust. And that this is not just another same old event, but I'm bringing my best. When I retired, the company had grown from an employee of one, me, to to a company of 80 full-time people and 250 part-time people.
Wow.
And that was 7 years ago when I retired. And the company is 30% bigger now.
Wow.
My children, my sons bought the company and are doing magnificent because they knew what it was all about. They were in the wagon.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So they were literally along for the ride, right? And
Yes, they were.
understood what made it special and why it had grown to where it was, which is a unique position to be in. Well,
Yeah.
kudos to them as well, because, as you know, growing a business is very difficult. Starting a business is very difficult, but just running and keeping a business, even, if you will, is difficult. For them to have grown at 30% is phenomenal.
Yeah. Especially during COVID.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. What happened with that? I mean, there aren't events.
They bought the business from me in 2018. COVID, of course, hit in 20. And they're thinking, oh my gosh, was this the stupidest decision we ever made? We still owe mom all this money, and now we have no business. But true to integrity and their best selves, they stopped taking salaries. I stopped taking my payments. And we kept those employees. We lost a lot by just people leaving, but everyone that stayed, we kept and paid. And that was bringing our best self. And the same thing that I established with my purveyors in 2008 and 9 when the recession hit, that Mary pays her bills no matter what, still was there with them then. And they had all purveyors just rushing to them, won't you buy from us? When you do buy, we realize you're not buying, but when you do, will you pay from us? Because we know you're going to be financially stable.
So cool. So cool.
Lessons of generations. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I'm curious. I mean, walk us through whether it's a president or Elton John, you had the experience of the Olympics, which, I mean, I was just thinking, I can't imagine. I mean, that's several months. I'm sure that there's events, contemporaneously all throughout, 3 or 4 or 5 catering things, 4 or 5, 6 times a night, 7 days a week. I mean, it just executing, I'm sure, was very difficult, but I'm sure I'm curious. You're about to cater for Oprah, right? So did her folks call you and set it up? I mean, what is that like?
Well, of all these people, no, the president himself did not call, nor did Oprah to get my.
Yeah.
Hey, do you have Mary's phone number?
Hey, Mary's the president.
But their people call, yes.
Sure.
And so, or perhaps if they're going to be at a location here in Utah, the location might call me because they've been given the task of finding me. So relationships are everything. People want to refer people they know they can trust. And so when Oprah's people came to town, they were at a particular venue, and that venue recommended 5 different caterers. but then said, but this is the one you should call. And when you have that kind of relationship, you only earn that one way. You only keep it one way. Sometimes you can buy it by giving people a kickback for recommending you, but you only maintain it when you live it.
Yeah.
Because the first time that person they gave a kickback to doesn't perform well, then your job and your name and your trust is mud.
Yeah.
So
just all reputation was how you built it. So word of mouth, people referring.
Well, I did a lot of marketing, I have to say. During the recession, and I told my boys this during COVID, the people who end up on top after a recession are those who marketed through the recession and who stayed top of mind, who were still showing up, who still were donating things to your nonprofits and bringing food and being part of the community. That's the worst time to cut your marketing budget, is during a recession. Yeah, you want to cut back, but not cut, because you still need to be there top of mind when things come out. In fact, I told the governor this, and I told one of the banks, I was on their board of trustees at the time. I said, listen, if you ever want advance notice of what's happening financially, just call me. Because we are the first to know if people are starting to entertain again and feel confident and hiring us and they're going to do this. And we're the first to know when they call and pick up the phone. Yeah, we've decided to postpone that launch. And so we're not going to buy that building this year. We know. So it's an interesting, I've met so many interesting people. I loved my career. I loved it. I birthed it right up until the day I left.
Wow.
And then I was on to something else.
Yeah. Well, you obviously did a lot of things right, or else you wouldn't not have been successful. I'm curious, were there events or decisions or things along the way that you look back on and can say, man, that was a huge mistake? And, you learned from it or got better because of it? What type of mistakes did you make along the way?
Yeah, I'm of the mindset that Nelson Mandela, who said, I am either winning or I'm learning. And that is one of the best mindsets, when you can look back and say, what did I learn from this? And so I don't look at any of my decisions in my career as losing. I really think they were learning opportunities for me of what can I bring better. And for example, this is later in the career, when I began to get a little self-confident, a little bit of cockiness, like, yeah, we're the best. And so we were supposed to show up to market something, and there were lots of caterers coming. And I thought I could just slide on my reputation. So you sit back just a little bit. Then when the bid is awarded and we didn't get it, I was like, now I could have seen that as a huge failure, or I could have made excuses for them, like they don't know what they're doing, they're going to be sorry, blah, blah. Or I could take it in and say, what did you learn from this, Mary? You forgot to bring your best self. And showing up with a little tiny notebook instead of a huge spread of food was not your best self. And so you learn, you get to reevaluate and come back at it and do it again. Life does not say you get only one shot. Very few things in this life are a one-shot time. Now, it might be one shot in what you perceive as an opportunity, but it's not one shot in life's opportunities.
Yeah.
A great example of that is my life right now. As a working single mother, and even though I was married, it was like I was single. He could not hold down a job. He really did not care for the children in the way that I think a father should care for them. So I was wearing a lot of different hats. And I chose often to choose the company and over showing up for a basketball game. It's very hard for me to say that now. when I hear at this age, when we have those heart-to-heart talks with my children who are now in their 40s, sometimes, Mom, I would just wonder, what were you doing that was more important than me? That is some of the hardest stuff you'll ever hear. And you might sit back and say, well, Mary, that was a once-in-a-shot opportunity. And you don't get a second chance. I don't know if I feel that way. Because now the relationship I have with my children, we are so close. And where do you think I am? Like this week, had 3 baseball games, 1 soccer game. I had 2 plays, 1 choir concert, a graduation. I mean,
Yeah.
and everyone knows in Mary's life, if I have a family commitment, I don't care if you just think that it's a basketball game. It's the most important thing I can do. And because I learned from my opportunities, I now have this one. And my children have given me a second chance.
That's really special. Really special. So how many grandchildren do you have?
I have 7, 3
Wow.
children and 7 grandchildren. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of plays and basketball games and
It is.
choir
And they're
concerts.
age 7 to 17. So we have, and each one I think plays 3 sports. So
Oh my goodness, that's crazy. Well, congratulations. That's fantastic. Well, so oh my gosh, I just realized we're running up on time here, but one final question. If you could go back to the Mary that was pulling the wagon, that was, had nothing.
yeah.
And you had a chance today to go back and you could spend, 60 seconds with that Mary. What do you think that you would tell her?
Take off all those Post-it notes that you're putting all over yourself, showing people what you've accomplished and what you've done. Your value lies in here. Fail as often as you can, because it's in failure that you learn and you grow. Mary, you don't learn while you're laying on the beach somewhere under the sun, getting a great tan. There's no learning that happens there. The learning happens when you're in the ditch and in the nose with nose to the grindstone. That's where the learning happens. So, and if it doesn't work out, you learn from it. Fail as often as you can, because that's where the lessons are. The other thing I would tell her is I would hold her close and look right in her eyes. And I would say, you don't know this yet, but you end up being a really fabulous person. And in the end, people pay you to have you give them advice. In the end, you have everything you've ever wanted. In the end, you get to be the person who's inside of you. You win. And if I could convince her of that, it would change everything. But I wouldn't take away all of her struggles, because that's where she learned and that's where she became fabulous.
I love that. I love that. You are fabulous. And I am very inspired by your story and where you came from and what you've done. And the person that you are and have become. I just think it's fantastic. And I think other people are going to enjoy hearing this story as much as I have. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking an hour to share it with us.
My pleasure, Brandon. I always feel like at the end of these, we've scratched the surface, and here was this little tiny piece, and I didn't tell you about being a seeker, and I didn't tell you about this, and I didn't tell you about my, at age 50 when I finally decided I was done with that life, and I on my own without surgery, pills, injections, went from 284 pounds to 140. I climbed Kilimanjaro at age 65.
Wow.
When I didn't even set foot on a mountain until I was 56. I mean, All of those things are possible because I threw off the shackles of who I thought I was and claimed who I really was. Realized I am enough. I am so much enough.
When you say threw off the shackles, do you mean you stopped letting yourself be defined externally and decided that you were defined by who you really were as opposed to what other people think? What do you mean by threw off the shackles?
Yeah. The day that we can let go of what other people think of us and really focus on what we think of ourselves is the first day that we step out of the shackles. The next big step, this one's hard for people, but it's the most important. The healing starts the moment the hiding stops. We hide so many things about ourselves, from our spouse, from our partners, from our children, from our next door neighbors, from so many people in life, people online. We hide the dark parts because we think we'll be rejected. They think we'll be judged as less than. But this is the great gift of life. When you realize that you can stop hiding, then you can start healing. And healing is what the journey that we're all on.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen to that, for sure. For sure. I love it. I love it. Well, you're full of wisdom. And I love that you love to share your lessons with others. So,
It's the best part of life right now.
well, it's beautiful, I think. I mean, I think it sort of encapsulates a lot of what this journey we call life is. And it's often so confusing. You do a really good job of distilling it into sort of understandable chunks really well.
Thank you. Well, just a little plug for me. I do have
Please.
my own podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And also I've written a book that's available on Amazon by Mary Crafts. It's called Unbounded, From Sorrow to Summit.
Oh, okay. Unbounded, From Sorrow to Summit. And that you can get that on Amazon.com.
Audible and in print. Yep.
Great. And then tell us about your podcast.
My podcast is fittingly called Crafting a Meaningful Life. And I have about 373 episodes.
Oh,
I've
wow.
been doing it a while.
Yeah. That's fantastic. That is, where can we find?
Just the usual, Spotify, Apple, all those kinds of things we're on.
I love it.
You can just Google it.
Yep.
Mary Crafts. Oh, but I'm not the clothing company in Florida. Don't get me confused.
Not the clothing company in Florida. Mary Crafts. Hey, everybody. Brandon Ansley, host of the Boundary Breakers podcast. I just wanted to take a second and say thank you so much for all of your support over the last year with the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and go hit the like button, rate the episode, depending upon your thoughts, and then leave a comment or two. We'd love to hear some feedback. Also, don't forget that there are more than 50 other podcast episodes for Boundary Breakers on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or any other mainstream podcasting platform. Thank you guys so much. See you the next episode.